Oh, good morning. Change of pace today. It rained, finally. It rained last night. And so we got about 4 to 5 tenths, not quite a half inch of rain, which is great. We needed it. We've got a puddle in the driveway. Oh, it's fantastic. So, but our bigger problem than that it rained is that our bins are full. Everything is full. So we've got to, we got to haul stuff today. So I'm going to get the generator fired up. We've actually got a little bit of beans we need to get out of here to get room in our overhead so we can start loading it with corn. So I'm going to load a truck up with beans, and then we're going to pull that in, and then we're going to start moving some corn. All right, so I got the truck started up. So we are filling our overhead right now. I don't want a lot, I just want enough to fill a truck, but it's gonna take a minute. So this is our bean bin. It is full of beans. We need to core it anyway. And when I say core it, I mean we need to draw some beans out through the center sump. So there's a hole right in the middle of the floor in the bottom that this auger is connected to. And so that auger is pulling out of that center sump, and basically it's creating a funnel on the top, and it's pulling beans all the way from the top down through the center of that bin and out through the unloading auger. That auger dumps into the end of our pit down there. The pit then carries it over to the leg, goes up the leg into our overhead bin. And so I got the truck started up. We moved that one out of the way. I'm waiting for the other one to air up so we can pull it under here and finish loading it. And like I said, we're going to load it as we're filling that bin so we don't have any extra up there, because I want to put corn in there when we're done. At one point, and maybe still someday in the future, there was talk of putting a second overhead bin in, which would be awesome to have one for corn and one for beans. Loading. You can hear we're almost empty. We don't have enough up there to fill the truck yet. We'll get the front hopper full and then we'll wait a minute. Well, we're almost full. I don't want to have any extra, so just letting it trickle out, but it's noisy because the beans are hitting the metal and not the other beans in there. You can see this load's going to be fairly dirty. Get a lot of pods and fines and just crap. Some of that's from the corn and the dust in there. Some of it's because we're coring this bin and taking the worst stuff out of the middle, which is why you core it. You won't want that stuff in your bin, so you haul it out. Probably a little light on this truck, but the overhead's empty. We're close enough. Tarp it and haul it. Just a little light today. That's actually a pretty good load. Pretty slow here this morning with the rain. In fact, they've got the doors closed to keep the water out, which I understand, but now I have to wait until I figure out where they want me. Phil's here. Maybe he's transferring corn. Well, he's cleaning up around the dryer, but maybe he's transferring corn. We want to pull some out of the GSI top dry and haul that in because we need to core that bin as well, and we'll dry a little bit more into it then. But we wanted to get a little bit hauled out of there, and then we can start either pulling out of this bin or running the dryer or something. Well, we got enough to load a truck up here, so we're loading this up. I think Phil's going to take this one in. All right, so what we're doing now is pulling out of this bin over here. This is our GSI top dry that was pretty full, not quite full, but pretty darn close. We want to, again, core it, take those fines out of the center of it. But also, we haven't hauled any out of there to know how dry we're getting it exactly. We think we're doing okay, but it'd be nice to know that that corn is dry enough and that we were drying it long enough. Anyway, we're transferring that into our overhead now. And you can see on the side there, we've got those 3 different indicators. And the bottom one is tripped, it's yellow. And the second one is not, and the top one is not. So basically, we tried to position those so that when it's tripped, it's a semi-load. We can hold 3 semi-loads in that bin. So we've got one in there now. Phil just took one out. When the second one gets tripped up there, we'll know we've taken about 3,000 bushels out of this bin. That's what we're trying to do, and we'll shut that down. And then we're going to fire our dryer back up. We've still got a bunch of wet corn. We got 3 lights on the wet bin there, and we're going to dry into the big bin. I went up and looked there this morning. It is about a full ring that we can fill it yet. So that's the plan. In fact, I should go up there and go in the bin and walk around a little bit more so that we can just check the other sides and stuff. But we'll get to that. So we're still waiting on that to transfer a little bit. That GSI has only got an 8-inch unload. It's a little bit slow. My fancy new graphics card came to my computer. So hopefully we can get this fixed today. We're learning how to be computer repair. Because, well, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Unless you don't know what you're doing, in which case you better figure it out. Because, I mean, I took it somewhere and they didn't fix it. So, yeah, this is way overkill for what I'm doing. It's pretty fancy. But it should work well. I need to get a better monitor is what I need. It is getting cold and windy out here. No fun. Anyway, we just fired up the dryer. We got 2 loads of corn up there. I should fire up the other truck and haul one is what I should do. But I'm gonna watch the dryer here for a little bit, make sure it fills and everything's running okay. Sometimes when the belts get wet, they slip. Notice our little shovel umbrella that we've got over the wet leg, or the wet auger, wet bin auger. When that one gets wet, it slips. And then it doesn't feed the dryer, and it burns belts up. We found that if we put that shovel over it, it keeps the rain off of it, and it works. So, anyway, just getting up to temp and up to speed, and we'll keep an eye on things for a minute. Well, if we're going to run those kind of bushels an hour through, it isn't going to take long. It is not going to take long to chew through this corn and to get that bin full. Oh, man. All right, so Phil is still hauling corn. I've been keeping the dryer moving. This is the problem with fall, and you get, yeah, the truck gets all dirty. Anyway, it's lunchtime. I'm gonna go grab some lunch. I've been working in the office a little bit. I got my new graphics card installed on the computer. It's working well. Now I just need a monitor capable of, you know, making it worth having that graphics card. But yeah, that's good. Also, I found out yesterday, this new cell phone tower down the road from us here, it's AT&T. My aunt stopped. She saw them working on it. She slammed on the brakes, backing up, stop and ask them, what provider is it, and is it functional? And it is operational, and it is AT&T. We have Verizon, and it's terrible. And so I've been looking into what does it take to switch to AT&T. And hopefully we can have good cell phone service for all you guys, and I can do live streams from the field and not worry about it, and it will be fantastic. That's the goal. All right, I'm back from lunch. I'm still kind of working on some paperwork and watching the dryer. Look at that, we're up to 1,750 bushels an hour. Flying through. So we need to do a dryer calibration. Phil came and got another load out. So we're still filling the overhead there. Still just one load, but we're gonna push our button and then hold this slide open and catch the corn as it's coming out of there. We'll go in and test it through our moisture tester and make sure that it matches what the moisture sensor here is telling us. So that gray box right there is the moisture sensor coming out of the dryer. There's a little rotary paddles or whatever that kind of meters the corn through that, and it takes a sample every second or two. So it thinks it's 15.3, and we'll run it through the tester here and see what the tester thinks that it is. 15.7. So we do 3 of these, average them, just to make sure we're getting a good sample. Well, we got a 15.7 and 2 15.8s, so we're going to put 15.8 in, 15.8, enter, and then it'll kind of self-correct from there. We keep these in a spreadsheet, and then I made it make a fancy, nice little graph so you can see what our moisture's done over time, and the difference between them is kind of what's important. You want them to be even so that there's, obviously we want this to be as accurate as possible to this. So that's the goal there. Anyway, it's rolling. 1,743 bushels an hour. Doesn't take long to blow through a wet bin at that kind of a rate, especially when you're not adding to it. So 2 of our lights are out. We've just got 1 left. I don't know that it would all fit up there, but if Phil can get another load out, we'll get close at least. All right, I'm coming out here to check on stuff again. Phil came and got another load of corn out, which is good. And I believe we're about out of wet corn. Yeah, in fact, it's already shut itself down. Out of wet corn. All right. Well, the fans are just running, but it's cool. See, we're at 61 degrees. Everything is off. All right. So that is good. That means we can go back and shell when we are ready to do so. It's a little sticky today, and it's 3 o'clock. We aren't going to shell corn today. Not going to happen, but we will probably try and do some tomorrow. We're going to keep filling the overhead. We're going to start pulling out of this bin, and we'll refill that one, but we've got to haul a bunch of corn out, so that's where it's going to come from. So we've got our legs still running. I changed our distributor to the overhead bin. Turn this wheel and it pulls on the cable and it moves the distributor to a different pipe so that it'll come down here. We need to turn our pit back on, and we're going to turn this unload on, which I believe is right here. That's slightly dangerous. It'll be all right. And then we open this. Something like that. That is a 10-inch unload, faster than that 8-inch and that 8-inch, but similar to our wet bin is a 10-inch unload. So those move a little bit faster. We'll kind of watch our amps on our leg here once it gets full. We can run our leg up to 45 amps is what it's rated for. So, but same thing with the beans, where we had to run them through the pit to get back to the leg. We're running that corn through the pit to get back to the leg. So we'll get that filled up so we can keep hauling some out. And then I think the plan is to actually transfer out of this bin into the big one and just get it topped off and done, so we can be done with the big bin and not worry about it anymore. All right, so we're transferring corn. Should we talk about our grain system a little bit? I've been saving this video for a rainy day during harvest. This is the first rainy day we've had during harvest, so it's kind of gotten put off, but I kind of had that in the back of my mind that when we got one, we talk about our grain system and our dryer and how it works and all of that stuff. So that's what we're going to do now. All right, so obviously, or maybe not, but we've got our pit, right? The pit is underneath the overhead bin. The grain goes down into that when we bring trucks in. We dump them. You guys have seen us doing that in the last few weeks. It goes through an auger, and then it goes up the leg, the shorter leg. The shorter leg is actually the big leg. It's an 8,000 bushel an hour capacity when you open the slides up on the pit to get the corn into it fast enough. That leg we put up in 2010. It's been there for 12 years now, and that is what feeds all of our bins then. So there is a distributor up there. You will see. All right, I'm going to do my best here. But the corn goes up on this side, the left side. It goes over the top, and the corn gets thrown out of the buckets into this chute right there. That chute feeds into the distributor, which is the thing up there with all the holes and pipes coming out of it. There's an arm in there, or a pipe, that starts at the top and then it moves, and you can turn it with the wheel on the bottom there to select which hole you want it to go to, which determines which bin it goes to. It then goes through the downspouts. There are 12-inch downspouts coming off of that bin. One to our overhead, one to our wet bin, one to our GSI dryer bin, one to the dryer, kind of. We'll talk about that. And then to these two bins. From that far bin in the back there, the Butler bin, we have a drag conveyor, a double run cannon, whatever the heck you want to call it, that takes corn up to our big bin that you can't even see from here. 120,000 bushel bin, you can't even see it. There it is. But that's the one that we're getting ready to finish topping off and filling now. So that's the grain movement. But when we bring wet corn in, right, so we're feeding our dryer. We have this big grain handler dryer that dries 90%, 95% of our corn through there. And so that is a continuous flow dryer, meaning that it is always metering some out through the bottom, and it always needs to be filled, or fairly consistently needs to be filled. And so the way that we accomplish that is with that downspout that goes back up to our distributor. But you'll notice right there, we have an overflow valve, or K valve, or whatever you want to call it. But basically what happens is when we select the dryer on our distributor, the corn is going to come out and it wants to fall straight through that valve down this pipe to the dryer bin. Now, we can't just feed it all into there. It won't hold truckloads, right? So what happens is that pipe will back up with corn. It'll fill all the way up. And then in that K valve, there's an overflow. And it will overflow into our wet bin, which is how we fill the wet bin. We basically overflow it into there. And then when the dryer calls for corn and we're not here dumping a truck, that pipe has been emptied, it turns on this unload auger from the bottom of the wet bin, which then augers it back up, dumps it down the same pipe, but now that pipe to the dryer is not full, so it goes into the dryer until the full switch goes off, and then it shuts it off, so it's not just sitting there recirculating corn forever. So let's talk about our dryer. It's a grain handler. It is a 2412, which means it is 24 feet in length, has 6 fans underneath it with 7.5 horse motors on it. I'll have to check that. It is 24 foot in length. It is 12 tiers high, not 12 feet, 12 tiers. It is what is known as a mixed flow, continuous flow dryer. And so it is not a tower, it's not a batch or a traditional style continuous flow. It's a mixed flow where we have all of these triangular vents. And you can see the corn in there, and there's essentially a vent, but it is closed to the inside. Now, if I open this door, this gets us into the middle of the dryer. And you'll notice that we have all of those triangular vents. Let me turn my light on. Right, so we've got all of those triangular vents on both sides. So we have 2 grain columns that are 2 feet thick. One here and one over here. Right, that's a 2 foot thick grain column. We've got the opening in the center and another grain column. So these triangles are open to the center, but not the outside. What that does is force air through our fans that are down there, blowing air up. Here's the burner, we'll get to that. It forces that air through this duct, down through the corn, and eventually through that corn and out through the vents on the outside, pushes the air out through it. That hot air takes the moisture out of the corn as it is moving. So we have a big long burner the entire length of this here, and it creates the heat. We run our plenum temperature at 200 degrees usually. You can go up to 220, you can go lower. Sometimes if we have dry corn, we'll run it down to 180 just to slow the dryer down a little bit. But that is how we dry our corn. And so on the bottom here, let's see if we can show it very well. All right, before we get to that, this is the gas train. There's a valve here that meters the flow going in with the intent to keep that temperature right at what our plenum temperature set point is, so 200 degrees in our case. But underneath here, what I was getting at, you'll notice those big sprockets. Those sprockets run the metering rolls. So there's a metering roll. There's actually 4 of them on this dryer, 2 on each side, that run the entire length of the dryer. They sit up underneath here, right up inside that door there, which we cannot open because it will drain the entire dryer. And it just sits there and turns like this, and it dumps the corn into the drag conveyor, which comes out right here. That drag conveyor comes all the way down, starts down here, and it drags the corn down to this other end. That drag conveyor dumps into this drag conveyor. This drag conveyor drags it across into the dry leg, okay? The dry leg is the little leg. It's actually much taller, but not as big a capacity because it's only taking out of the dryer. So I think it's a 3,500 bushel an hour capacity because our dryer will never put out more than that. And that one goes up, and then we have a few pipes that are actually coped into the downspouts going from the big leg down to the bins. So we didn't run additional downspouts all the way across. I don't know if that was the best way to do that or not. The proper way would probably have been to put a different distributor on the big leg, a double flat back kind of thing. But this was workable situation, and it was a whole lot more affordable at the time when we put the dryer in. So it comes out of those top pipes, which are only 8-inch, copes into the 12s, and then goes to whichever bin we want it to go to. We do have a distributor up there, same as the bottom leg, or the big leg, the wet leg, whatever you want to call it. that allows us to pick which bin we want it to go to. Now, we do still have this GSI top dry. I've shown you this a little bit, but essentially there's a false floor up there on the top. We can hold 1,500 bushels up there at a time in a batch. We have another big fan and burner down there that we use to blow hot air up that duct into the bottom of that drying floor, and then it just goes up through the floor and out the roof vents to dry corn for that. Before we put the grain handler in, we actually had our overhead's full. Hold on. So we have a buzzer up there and an indicator. You can't tell that thing is tripped at all, but there's a rotary indicator up there that trips when that bin is full. So it is full. All right, so now what we're gonna do, sorry, pausing the dryer or the grain system tour, we're gonna keep pulling out of this bin. We're gonna go back up to our big bin, and we're gonna try and get that full out of here. So I turned the distributor from the overhead to the 42-foot Butler, which is our dry conveyor. I turned that on and it goes up to the bin there. All right. Now, where were we? We were talking about something. Oh, before we had the grain handler. So we actually had a Stormore top dry that was put up in 1986. That was the original dryer that I'm familiar with on this farm anyway. And we had 2 of those top dry bins that we worked back and forth. And they're a good drying system. And they're efficient. The problem with that system is, once the bottom storage part of that bin gets full, you have to transfer that corn out. And so, between the Stormore and the GSI, it would take 4 or 5 hours every morning to transfer dry corn out, put it in this bin, put it in that bin. For 1 year, it was put it in the big bin, and it just got so slow and restrictive that we couldn't get enough acres shelled because of the transferring. It wasn't so much that we couldn't dry it fast enough, it was that we couldn't get it out of the bin fast enough. And so that's when we took the Stormore bin out, we put the grain handler in, and that is a great system. We really, really like it, except for when it catches on fire. Now, all of these bins have aeration floors in them, basically a false metal floor with perforations in it that we can blow air into it. That's what this little fan here is. That's an aeration fan that's blowing air under the floor up through the crop to keep it in condition, keep it from getting moldy. Same thing here, same thing. That big bin actually has 2 of those centrifugal fans on it that blows air underneath the floor to blow air up through that grain and pushing lots and lots of air through there. So they're both running now, and yeah, it works. They work as designed. Okay, next. We have a lot of fans, a lot of motors, a lot of power requirements to run this grain system, right? Our farm sits in Michigan. You see that house over there? That's my house. That's Ohio. In fact, that field right there is Ohio. You see that? That is the last electric pole on the line. Right there. We're the end of it. We'd only have 400 amps of single-phase 230-volt electrical service here. We asked, back in 2006, when we put this burner up, this dryer, we asked about the possibility of getting 3-phase power from our power company. We were told at that time, $100,000 a mile. No questions about it, 100 grand a mile. That was 15 years ago. It's 2.5 miles to get to 3-phase power from here. So for $250,000, we decided, no, let's not do that. And at the time, what we did instead was put in some phase converters so that we could run 3-phase motors, because that fan on that GSI burner is a 40-horse motor. You can't do that on single-phase power. So, over here in our electrical shed, one of them, we put these rotary phase converters in. Those take our single-phase electric, turn it into 3-phase electric. We then have a 3-phase panel, or a main disconnect, breakers for the house and the shop, and the 3-phase system. So what we could do then was run our burner for our dryer, the big dryer fan, on 3-phase power. It allowed us to put some of our unload motors on 3-phase power, and the aeration fans. That was the big one. So this is our 3-phase panel. For a while, we were running a lot of stuff with this. We since have taken a lot off because we just don't need it anymore. But the big thing that we use the 3-phase phase converters for now in this panel is the aeration fans. The aeration fan on both of those 2 bins, the wet bin and the GSI, the aeration fan, I believe on this 42-foot bin and on the big bin, are all coming out of this panel. Now over here, we still have our single phase 240 volt system that runs lights and outlets on the bins, that kind of stuff, and control circuits. It doesn't actually run any motors anymore that I'm aware of. I need a haircut, my goodness. Now, in 2010, when we replaced our old 3,000 bushel an hour leg with this 8,000 bushel an hour leg, we went from a single phase 10 horse motor to another 40 horse motor. All of a sudden, we didn't have enough power, even with those phase converters, just to run our stuff. And keep in mind, we still had the Stormore bin at that time with the second top drive that had two 10 horse single phase motors on it as well. So at that time, we decided, we already knew three phase from the power company was out of the question, it's too expensive. We decided to buy a generator. So that's when we bought that Coleman generator that I used for irrigation all summer. We bought that then. We started powering our grain system with that three phase 480 volt generator. Works much better. You can run smaller wire. The motors start better. The power's there when we need it. It's not when we don't. We don't have to pay demand charges. We don't have to pay commercial electrical rates. We just have to burn some diesel fuel. I can burn a lot of diesel fuel for $250,000. A couple of years ago, let's see, the date, 2019, we found this generator for sale not too far away, up in Jackson. It was a backup generator for a banking data center, and it's like a 2002, it's got a Cummins motor in it, had like 300 hours on it. The thing was almost 20 years old, 15 years old, had 300 hours on it. It's perfect for what we needed. So this is a 230 kilowatt generator, much bigger than the 190 that we were running before, and we've got another 100 kW one that we run our grain system at Berkey with. That's another subject. This one is stationary. It does not move. It is not trailer mounted, so we poured a pad for it. We set it on there. It stays there. That is what powers the majority of our grain system now. Basically everything but the aeration fans. All of the unload motors, both of the legs, both dryers, the big burner here, all of the motors on the grain handler dryer, the dry conveyor up top, all coming from here. A week ago when we were running this motor and we had everything running at the same time, I looked on the panel on the dryer, on the generator, and it said we were pulling about 95 kW, 75 amps or something like that at 480 volts. So we're using a lot of power, much more than we could get from the power company, reasonably, but nowhere near the capacity of that generator. Everything makes sense? That's what we've got. So that's our grain system in a nutshell. Oh, I didn't show you the big three-phase power shed that we put in back there. We'll go look at that real quick. But it's a pretty efficient system. It works really well for us. I've gotten some comments in the last couple of videos about adding more grain storage because we're out of storage now. But the last 2 years we haven't filled the bins. This year our yields are exceptional, so that's part of the reason why we're have so much extra right now, and we just don't have enough acres to justify a bigger or another grain bin. We do have provisions, we have room for it if we need it, but we have no plans to adding a grain bin right now. So this is the three-phase 480 volt electrical shed here. We've got a big breaker panel with the breakers for that. There's some motor starters and stuff here. There's some back there on the back side. There's another door over there to get in there. So anyway, that's what we've got for that. Oh yeah, while we're out here, we've got a 18,000 gallon propane tank here that we use, and we burn a lot of propane when we're drying corn. We're at about 42% on our tank right now. We have gotten 2 transport loads in the last 2 weeks. Right now we're burning about 9,000 gallons of propane a week through our grain system. So it is expensive to run all of this stuff, but it's much cheaper to dry the corn ourselves than it is to haul it into town. I've kind of figured out the cost difference before. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it costs us about half of what it costs, what the elevators charge to dry corn. There goes another truckload of corn he should get in tonight. Last one. So we're gonna go up and look at the bin. It's filling, and it's filling quickly, so we got to keep an eye on it. So this is the bin we're pulling out of. Absolutely do not ever even consider going into it actively being pulled out of bin. You will die. Like, you will. So we aren't going in there, but you can see how it's coned down now instead of peaked up towards the roof. And yeah, we're pulling out of there. Came up to the top of the big bin, look at our distributor. You can see the corn's moving over it much faster now because we're pulling out of a bin rather than the dryer. Don't drop your phone, you'll lose it forever. At some point I'm going to have to shut it off so we can go and look around and see how full we're getting. Right here by the door in what had been the high spot, we're about a half a ring or so. But we're trying to push it to the other side. The question is, how effective are we being? The last thing we want is for it to get higher over there and we start spilling it before this side's full. Up we go to check again. I'm getting tired of climbing these stairs, but it's better than a ladder straight up the side of that bin, I can tell you that much. We got quite the catwalk system here to get up to that bin. We got stairs going up this one, a catwalk across to the next roof, some stairs up to the peak, another catwalk, a short ladder. Yeah. Getting closer. We're definitely getting a bigger peak in the middle than we've had. Probably run for a half hour yet. All right. We're still moving grain. We filled both of these trucks, that one and that one. The elevator's closed at 6 o'clock, so we can't get any more in tonight. But we'll get those two full, and we're going to fill the overhead tonight yet and try and haul that stuff in the morning. And then we're going to get back to shelling. We probably could shell now if we really wanted to. We don't really want to. So we're just finishing topping off that big bin. It's taken more than I thought, but Phil and I went up and checked it again and thought maybe run it for another half hour. So that's right now. Phil's going up to look at it and check. We'll probably shut that down and then just fill the overhead, and we'll be done there. So we still got a lot of corn to haul when we can get to it. But we got to keep shelling corn too. I need a haircut really bad. So anyway, thanks for watching tonight. I did send in my broken GoPro, so hopefully a new one shows up before too long. But they had to get it back before they would send me a new one. Whatever. Anyway, have a great night. Questions, comments, leave them down below. We'll see you again in the morning.